It's big and docile, but with a few mods, it turns into a beast. Hey there, I'm John. This is Two Brothers RC, and this is the E-flite Carbon Z Cessna 150T. I'm following up on this bird today because I made some seriously good mods to it, but before we cover that, let's give it a proper look through the no patent pending Two Brothers review system, because it never actually got a proper review. So let's dive into it and see how it stacks up. The Cessna 150T is an interesting bird. The plane was made in that period of time when the quality control checks weren't exactly up to the same level of standards that we're seeing now from current Horizon releases, so it's not going to be as good a score as it could be, but it's a great flying airplane. And I love mine even more after the power upgrade and better servos. This bird originally shipped in a tricycle configuration. Now it's a tail dragger too, and you can convert it back into being a nose dragger if you want, but I prefer tail draggers in general, so that's what we're sticking with. That said, let's dig into the review metrics and see how the Cessna looks from today's perspective. Starting with agility, the Cessna cannot be flown with a neutral center of gravity without modifying it with tail weight. This is unfortunate, but is a consequence of the design. I did as much as I could to get the weight shifted aft, and the plane just feels nose heavy, even if it flies really well, failing our first checkpoint. In stock form, it takes off and it lands without a struggle, but the landing gear do have some oddities that we'll cover later on, which can make landings a bit trickier than they really should be. And definitely don't thrust reverse without at least reinforcing the tail springs with zip ties, because they can and they will get crossed over and tangled up in one another. It's not ideal, but it does pass this checkpoint. The Cessna has adequate thrust for bush flying, but not enough thrust to hover out of the box, at least not without using literally the entire stick to do it.
We are not going to be hovering this thing today. That was full throttle.
Oof.
You can fly within reasonably confined areas and wide open spaces on the stock power system, passing this next checkpoint. However, I don't like how much stick it takes to hover. I don't trust that at all. The Cessna does benefit substantially from the motor upgrade that I recommend, which is the Power 60 470 kV unit, swinging a 16x8 Zor propeller powered by a 100 amp Spectrum Avian ESC. Unfortunately, it's an absolute dog to install the motor, and it requires way too much work to fit it in there. Yet, it's totally worth doing once you fight it to get it installed in the plane in the first place. The hardest part of installing the motor is getting the motor screws beveled using a Dremel tool. Otherwise, they will not fit because the motor mount isn't wide enough to allow them to fit without some kind of tool to phase them through the molecules of the motor itself. Once you get it installed, you can hover on like 35% throttle with a light battery, and you've got so much thrust that you're bending the wings while aggressively maneuvering it. It's pretty awesome. This might end up being the first plane that I experience an in-flight breakup with flying on this power system. One last thing to note about the upgraded power system is that you will knock the canopy out of the plane with the additional prop wash.
That was the battery canopy.
Uh-oh.
We've overpowered the motor so much that pieces are coming off of it in flight. That's just the way it should be.
Need some stronger magnets.
Look at the way these wheels handle it.
And there it goes.
But Fortunately, it's an easy fix. Just add a few lines of CA glue to the latch mechanism and hit it with accelerator in between applications. It's an instant field fix that extends the latch enough to prevent air pressure from knocking the canopy off. The Cessna does have a low 1G stall speed, which is helped by having gigantic ironing boards for wings and flying on light batteries. If you run this on 3000 class batteries, you should have no issues with stalls if you keep your turns coordinated and don't load up the wings hard while maneuvering, passing our next checkpoint. From what I could see, those big wings are pretty forgiving, allowing you to throttle right out of any stalls and counter any wing drops with rudder input, passing the easy stall recovery metric too, for a grand total of 4 out of 5 here. Moving on to the flight time section of this review, the stock power system with mixed throttle flying will net you an average of 7 minutes of flight, and you can easily get over 10 minutes of flight with lightweight batteries. The Cessna's power system is very efficient in stock form. This changes substantially with the Power 60 motor upgrade. Because it's so much more powerful and it draws more amps in general, you're going to lose at least a few minutes of flight compared to stock if you fly it the way you've seen me flying it. If you're more conservative with your throttle, you can get very similar results to stock, just with a ton of added thrust when you need it. The Cessna 150T earns a 5 out of 5 here. Moving on to the landing gear section, we inspect the wheels first, and come to the conclusion that, while they work, they're massive boulders. Absolutely rock hard, with zero suspension. These wheels pass and fail our first 2 checkpoints. The wheels are not attached to a suspension per se, but I will give it a pass here because the full-scale Cessna 150T has an identical strut system. And what it would drive most of its suspension from is softer wheels, which you can fortunately install yourself. The FMS Super Cub 1300mm wheels can be drilled to fit perfectly and can be inflated to any pressure you desire, obviously within reason. Don't overinflate them unless you want the wheels to explode on touchdown. On second thought, that might actually be pretty cool. Make sure you film it if you do it, otherwise I will be disappointed in you. In stock form, the gear setup causes quite a bit of bouncing, a rather annoying amount even, failing our next checkpoint. When you've got hard wheels and metal struts, you've got a recipe for bouncing. You better get used to 3-point landings, because anything else is gonna bounce, and it ain't gonna be pretty. The Super Cub wheel upgrade still bounces a little, but nothing like the stock wheel setup on this plane does.
Wheels can make a big difference with a plane, and those Super Cub wheels are a humongous improvement. Not even a single hint of bouncing at all.
For 20 bucks, or at least I can only hope that they'll stay that price, the Super Cub wheels are a fantastic upgrade for planes like this, and they actually weigh a little bit less than the stock wheels too, by like 10 grams total or something silly like that. Friends don't let friends fly on rock-hard wheels. Get the Super Cub wheel upgrade, you will thank me later. Seriously, just compare the differences here between the stock wheels and the Super Cub wheel upgrade. Yeah, you know I'm right. Our final checkpoint in this category looks for whether the gear are low maintenance, and unfortunately not. The tailwheel springs can and will cross over one another with enough side load, and they're nowhere near stiff enough to keep the plane tracking straight. If they get tangled up, it's super annoying to untangle them. Fortunately, there is a fix. Take a pair of zip ties and loosely tie them through the spring. This will provide a limiter to the springs, which will prevent them from getting tangled up on one another, and will also give it more steering authority on the ground. Basically, 2 zip ties worth a penny will save you $1's worth of headaches. It's awesome, but unfortunate that this needs to be done to begin with. Hopefully Horizon can update this plane in the future so that the gear are better, because in stock form, they're honestly pretty doo-doo, earning a grand score of 2 out of 5. Before we move on to the fit and finish and avionics sections, consider scrolling down a little and hit that like button. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please definitely do consider it. And if you're not part of our Discord chat server community, hop down to the description below and join up to chat airplanes with us. Moving on to fit and finish, the Cessna 150T meets our first checkpoint for bush planes by possessing large control surfaces. It's got big ailerons, a large elevator, and a rudder that could stand to be bigger but works well enough in the air. It also has flaps too, if you're of that particular persuasion. Out of the box, my Cessna 150T was impeccable, with perfect, undamaged foam, as I would expect from Horizon releases, passing again. It does feature CA hinges on all the control surfaces, and they've held up pretty well to my aggressive style of flying, so that's a pass as well. The 150T features super thin plastic decals instead of thick paper stickers, with a nice shiny finish to them that doesn't peel off on the plane. Again, nothing unusual here for a Horizon release, passing this category here with a 5 out of 5. Our final category is avionics and lighting, and we begin by checking for the servo quality. That is to say, whether they're plastic or metal. They're definitely metal, which passes. But I found them to be lackluster, and they are physically incapable of being programmed to travel beyond 100 units. So if you're like me and enjoy 150 up and down on the travel, you're not going to get that on the stock setup. But fortunately, the high-tech HS5245MG servos drop right in, and you can use them in both the ailerons and the rudder and elevator if you want full possible travel. Or you can do what I did and make it a mix, with AGFRC B26 CLM servos in the rudder and elevator, which are so stupidly overpowered that you'll break the plane long before the servos themselves ever fail. It's nice, but you will need to enlarge the servo trays in the fuselage for them to fit. The original 60 amp Avian ESC didn't have any overheating issues that I could spot, and the upgraded 100 amp unit running the Power 60 motor seemed to be quite capable in that regard as well, passing the second checkpoint. It does contain a lighting system, unlike the Carbon Z Cub SS, which only features fake decals that look like lights from a distance, and you gotta install them yourself. But it does come with lights, and they are correct, so the Cessna 150 passes here again. It does feature easily replaceable servos with servo doors that you can undo with a hex screwdriver and run whatever you want instead, passing this next checkpoint. Again, I'm flying on high-tech HS5245MG servos in the wings and AGF B26 CLM servos in the fuselage. As much as I want to say the motor mount is well designed, and it does seem to be, what bothers me is that I had to do a ton of work to get the Power 60 motor to fit. Like, seriously, I'm not joking, you really have to do a ton of work to get the motor screws beveled enough to fit into this thing. That's not a fault of the motor mount, so I can't hold that against it because it seems fine otherwise, passing the last checkpoint with another 5 out of 5. Overall, the Carbon Z Cessna 150T earns a 21 out of 25, with the biggest weak point being the landing gear, as you see on the radar graph. Seriously, they need some adjustments, but fortunately, none of those adjustments are terribly expensive or difficult to do. So that's a plus and what's otherwise a very large minus. With the power and servo upgrades, you can throw this thing around like it's a 3D plane and just enjoy the hell out of it, because I certainly did. And it's one of a few airplanes that I'm actually going to bring with me to Joe Nall coming up soon. If you're in the area, swing by. If you see my goofy ass walking around, feel free to chat. And I'll be handing out free Two Brothers RC stickers too. If you like the Cessna 150T and you'd like to support what we do here at no additional cost to yourself, hop down to the description below and pick up a brand new one for yourself. If it's in back order, fret not, place that order and it'll show up sooner rather than later. That said, thanks so much for watching, and huge thanks goes out to our channel members on twobrosrc.com/supporters. A very special thanks goes out to our mega fans, Sarasota RC Squadron, Michael Smith, JR Man, Todd, and a newcomer, the Pierce family. Along with our Ultra fans, Seahawk92 and TBRC fan. You guys kick so much ass. Coming up soon will be the in-depth overview of the Freewing A10 80mm version 2 picked up with channel membership funds. It's a big beast of a plane, but is it actually worth the money? We'll find out next Saturday. See you guys next week.